Hey everyone, Sam Smyers here. You're watching Soul State, and today we're going to go over how I mixed my song, Focus. So I'm going to go through my whole bass group. I have the sub, which is actually just going to be the low end to this growl. And I separated them on two different tracks because this bass growl is just going to be mostly the upper, mid to high range of that bass. And then I'm adding some reverb. I have that on another separate track because I want to cut off all of the low end of that reverb. And then also do some mid-side processing. I also have some automation for this reverb to add some tension to the bass. Then I have some reverse reverbs. We have this hit on the downbeat, then we have some space, but then in that space we have this reverb rising up. And then I have this bounce bass. Which is coming in between each of those bass growls. So if I play the growl with that bounce bass, it all fits really nicely because I EQ'd this bounce bass. I'm taking off a lot of that low end here because I want all that low end to come from this sub here. I do a lot on the bus as well. This R bass is really cool because it adds harmonics to your bass. And then this is the sidechain. Without the sidechain, that's a very aggressive sidechain, but it sounded good. So thing about your kick and your bass is you have to figure out which one is really going to occupy the lowest, basically that sub low end range. In this example, even though I do have a sub in the bass, it's in the mix really quietly. And I'm also using so much side chaining that if I check my kick, there's a lot of low end in the kick. This is basically all the processing I did to my kick. I have a lot scooped out here, around 400. And then I have this tuner on here because I wanted to make sure that my kick was in tune with the bass. So I transpose this down -3 semitones. For my kicks, I usually try to get them to fit in the grid. I have it cut off. If I extend it out, then it's actually a lot longer. So I did that to make sure it was a very tight sounding kick. That's -3. Put it back to -3. It's very subtle. If you are listening to it really loud, you would notice a difference. Whenever I tune it all the way down, then I feel like the oomph a little more. It's like not an exact science. You just have to like try pitching everything and all of a sudden something works. And so in the example here, I tuned my kick to, I don't know, -3 semitones, but I'm sure I spent a day just trying all kinds of different tunings of the kick. And I use references all the time. That's kind of like how I improved my mixing so much. I use this reference plugin. To the human ear, when you listen to things that are louder, they sound better. But if you're able to level match and make the levels the same, then you can get a better idea of whether you're actually making your song sound better. Whenever I'm ready to mix, I will spend a few hours trying to find songs that sound like my song, put 2 or 3 together, put them into this plugin, and then just start A and B in them. And you'll realize at some point they all sound different. And even though you'll notice you always like feel like, why doesn't my track sound like this track? but it's because every track sounds different. They're not all the same. So don't use just one reference track. Try 2 to 3. You really just have to pick a reference for and determine what in that reference do you like most about it that sounds similar to your track. So if a reference has a good bass, I'll focus on just how does the bass in that reference sound? Can I get my bass to sound like that? You're always going to get peaks that come through after this compressor. So let me check out what it sounds like without the compressor. Yeah, I feel like that compressor makes it pump a lot more. I use this K-Clip 3 on the master and I have it at the 100% soften. That means it's doing soft clipping. So let's check this out. It looks like I'm not even really clipping all that much. I always just do that just to make sure I catch any peaks. And it's not necessarily anything that you can hear, but it helps you maximize the loudness on your track. For any kind of master bus processing with EQ, you don't really want to be applying that much processing with the EQ. Like, I don't want to take this all the way down to 10 dB or something crazy, because that means that there's an issue with the instrument in your mix, and you should just go back to that instrument and try and fix it. This is only about negative dB around here. Let's go ahead and check that out. Generally, vocals can become very nasally or irritating around this frequency, so I applied some dynamic processing. And then also to control the hi-hats here, I have a dynamic band here. Let's go ahead and turn that off. I feel like that brightens up the track more, but whenever you hear that hi-hat come in, it doesn't brighten up the hi-hat. I actually have a full mixing course, which I'll talk about later in the video, which you can also check out, and that'll be linked below, and that'll help you if you're trying to improve your mixing or get to that next level with your mixes. Sometimes I master, sometimes I just send it to him. I used the mastering and the mix guy who did this plugin. His name's Tom Frampton. Now I mix knowing that I'm going to have him master it because I'm using his plugin, and he's going to do the same exact thing I'm doing. When I do master it, I send it with all of these on. And the only thing I don't have on is I don't have a limiter on. So then really all the mastering engineer is going to do is he's just going to put the limiter on, make it louder, and fix anything if he finds anything wrong with it, I guess. Most of your mixing should be at a comfortable listening level. But the thing is, whenever you have it at a comfortable listening level, the bass frequencies will sound quieter than they will at a club. If you turn your speakers all the way down, you'll still hear some hi-hats and cymbals and things like that. It's because our ears hear different frequencies at a different loudness at different levels. So periodically what I'll do is I'll turn up my speakers like pretty loud for like a couple seconds and just make sure that I have the bass set right. And I wouldn't worry about making your bass too loud. That's actually something that people do too much, is they make their bass way too loud. If your song is played in a club, they're going to have subs in the club. They're going to boost all of those bass frequencies. I always divide up all of my instruments into 4 or 5 buses. So I have effects group, drums, bass, instruments, and vocals here. Doing this helps manage everything a lot easier. I can now just solo this vocal group and then bounce that down, and I have an acapella. It's super easy. Or if I want to do instrumental, I just mute the vocals, and then I have an instrumental. Putting things in smaller bits of information makes it easier for your mind to process. This just makes it a lot more sense to me, where I can just like say, okay, how are the drums? Okay, drums are good. How are the bass? Oh, bass is good. How are the instruments? Instruments are cool. And then it's like super fast to go through everything and figure out what you need to fix or if everything is sounding good. So you can do light processing on your buses, like compression, saturation, and EQing. In this bass group, I have the sidechain, where I'm sidechaining all of the bass to the kick. So that's another easy way to make sure that all your bass is pumping together. So for the vocals, I love using this VC160 for compression.
Back there, you know where I'm at. You're too bad at acting. Your eyes, I can't back there. You know where I'm at.
I feel like it just glues them all together really nicely and pushes them to the front. And then I have some parallel saturation here. I have the Fab Filter Saturn.
Back there, you know where I'm at. You're so bad at acting. Your eyes I can't back.
And then I'm de-essing it in case there's any harsh S sounds coming through after I process it with the Saturn. And then I'm doing some EQing here. And then I blend that in with the original signal, and that's just parallel saturation.
Back there, you know where I'm at. You're so bad at acting. Your eyes I can't back there. You know where I'm at. You're so bad at acting. Your eyes I can't back there. You know where I'm at.
And I added this saturation
Back there.
because I wanted to get upper mid-range from the vocals. I had this low end muted, and then I just have everything above 500 hertz. Just undo that.
Back there, you know where I'm at. You're so bad at acting. Your eyes I can't back.
It's one of those situations where it doesn't sound good alone. It actually sounds not great. But when you mix it in with the original vocals by themselves, then it sounds good. And that's usually what you want to do with parallel processing, is just how can I get this parallel processing to make the original clean signal sound better. If you're finding everything that I'm doing so far helpful, then go ahead and check out the free vocal mixing cheat sheet that is going to be linked down below. And that'll help you mix your vocals and make them sound pro, just like this. This is the Fab Filter Pro Q3 on the vocals.
Back there, you know where I'm at. You're so bad at acting. Your eyes I can't back.
So this is cool because you can see where there are particular peaks, and I took that down about 1 or 2 dB. And then I'm able to add brightness without harshness by adding that boost with the dynamic band.
You're so bad. Can't back.
Dynamic EQ works really well with vocals because the vocalist, whenever they're singing, they change notes change frequencies, and if any frequencies build up, you're able to control them. If you don't use a dynamic EQ and I pull this down, then the entire vocal would be missing that frequency. So it's a cool way to help even everything out with a vocal, because vocals are dynamic and they kind of range like within the frequency spectrum, especially if the vocalist goes low and then high and then sings loud and quiet. Dynamic EQs work really well.
You're so bad at acting.
And then I have this taken out around 200, and that's usually where I have the bass. But of course this is really subtle because these are only like negative 0.46 dB, and then the dynamic band probably goes down another 2 or 3 dB. So it's always just trying to be very subtle with what you're doing on the bus processing, and if it becomes too much, then go back to the individual instrument. Bus processing, I do it at the end, and it's really how you get all the puzzle pieces to fit. And one thing I always do is every time I close a session, I bounce down the MP3. After you finish a mix, bounce down an MP3, give it a day or so, listen to the MP3, and then make some notes, write them down, go back to your mix, cross off everything on your notes that you want to change, and then bounce it down again, do the same thing, and that'll help kind of move things along. You have to establish, being an independent artist, you have to establish these arbitrary deadlines for yourself in order to actually get things done. And so, like, I'm mixing a song now, I want to release it in April, so I need to finish it in like the next 2 days. All the mixes that I do, they're from my bedroom. I'm in my room right now. This is where I do all my mixes, and my mixes on my songs. I mean, I have millions of streams on Spotify. That helps to know that I'm doing something right, and also the fact that other people want me to mix for them. I've spent the past couple of years learning how to mix on my own. It has been difficult going through all the YouTube videos and trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work. And over time, I think I've finally figured it out. I'm finally making like mixes that I'm happy with. So I wanted to try to figure out some way to show others how to mix from home in Ableton. And I also wanted to show people how they can do this with stock plugins. So what I did is I created a course, a mixing course. This is a digital course. It's 10 hours of content. There's 60 videos. It'll walk you through the fundamentals of mixing all the way up to how to put everything together. It'll walk you through every single plugin, compressors, reverbs, how they work. And there's also some bonuses involved. I'm just trying to help people who have struggled for a long time gain the tools that I have and the knowledge that I have learned over the past couple of years. And it's basically everything I know about mixing. I mean, whatever I showed you, like these are all things that are in the course in super deep detail. There will be a link at the bottom of this video to check it out. It is called the Modern Mix Academy. Yeah, so I'm a music producer in Los Angeles, California. I do EDM, dance music. I have probably like 20 million streams across platforms, 10 million on Spotify. I've been on Spotify Viral. I've had a billboard in Times Square recently where we were promoting one of our songs I just put out. I've had some songs on like Netflix. I've licensed songs with GoPro, Samsung. I've collaborated with other artists who have platinum records, artists that have hundreds of millions of streams on their music. All my information is down below if you want to check it out. If you decide not to join the Modern Mix Academy or you decide that it's not for you, I actually have a vocal mixing cheat sheet, which is about 20 pages of PDFs. It has a audio effects rack that uses Ableton stock plugins only. You can put it on your vocal and get your vocal sounding good right away, and that's free. You can get that from the link below. The Modern Mix Academy is for beginners just starting out learning how to mix. It's also for intermediates, people that have some knowledge of mixing but want to get to that next level. If any piece of information provides you that aha moment that makes your mixes so much better, then it's worth it. So I definitely recommend it for basically beginners, intermediates, or even if you're like advanced and you just want to brush up on some fundamentals, because there's so many pages of PDFs that I'm providing for you to go through and check out.